Few little matters. We're gonna record this event, and post it onto YouTube. But don't worry, the only people that will be recorded and on video are those in the little yellow box who are not muted. So if you have questions for our author and guests, please type them in the chat, and Rachel and I will pose them when we get to the Q&A.
Yes, please ask questions at any time. Just type them in the chat. We'll save them up. And then when we get to the Q&A at the end, we will ask them for you. So go ahead and do that at any point. Also, please note that we, like many independent businesses around the country, are encouraging people to please shop early and shop local this holiday season. Not just us, but any independent businesses that you love. Shop at them now to keep them there in the future. And shopping early really helps both. We really are making sure that we don't have crowding in December when normally we do have crowding. And also there are some real supply chain issues coming up in the book world. So please try to get your shopping done as early as you can this year. Thank you so much for that. We thank you, and all of your other favorite independent businesses, thank you for that as well. So David is going to introduce our guest this evening.
Well, it is my great pleasure to welcome Clifford Thompson, author of the Whiting Writers Award-winning book, Love for Sale and Other Essays. His writings appeared in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Village Voice, the TLS, Oxford American, the Los Angeles Review of Books, Best American Essays 2018, many other places. He's also the author of the novel Signifying Nothing and a memoir, Twin of Blackness. His new book is called What It Is: Race, Family, and One Thinking Black Man's Blues. Reviewers have called it captivating, elegant, and important, while Time magazine selected it as one of the most anticipated books of the season. Northshire was supposed to host him for an event at our Saratoga Springs location, but 2020 had other plans. The silver lining is that not only do I get to attend, as I'm normally in Manchester, and introduce him myself, but also we're joined by singer-songwriter Stu. Stu won a Tony Award for his 2008 musical Passing Strange. Spike Lee shot a feature film of the Broadway production, which has had a limited theatrical release, and before and then debuted on PBS's Great Performances. Stu also fronts the band called Stu and the Negro Problem, which has released 8 albums and received much critical acclaim. He is currently a visiting lecturer at Harvard University, the New School, and Sarah Lawrence. Stu also wrote Gary Come Home for SpongeBob SquarePants cartoon, which means so much more to his 10-year-old boy than the Tony Award. Please welcome to Northshire Live, Clifford Thompson and Stu.
Hi.
All right. Well, thank you to Northshire Bookstore for hosting this. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm happy to talk to my friend Stu. So I thought I would just say a couple of words about the book, and then read a very brief section of it, and then start our conversation. So here's the book, What It Is: Race, Family, and One Thinking Black Man's Blues. And the book is essentially a personal response to the election of Donald Trump in 2016, an event that caused me to, or I should say, challenged a couple of long and deeply held foundational beliefs of mine. And to explain what those are, I'll just say a couple of words about my background. I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the 1960s and 1970s in an all-Black neighborhood. And one of the things that my family instilled in me when I was growing up was the importance of judging people as individuals. You know, we of course were aware of white racism, but to my family, all prejudice was bad, including prejudice against white people. And so, you know, I very much had it instilled in me that I should take people one at a time. And so I absorbed that lesson, and then I went to college. I moved out into the wider world, into integrated circles, and you know, I still retained those beliefs from my family. And yet part of me started to wonder, you know, on some level, you know, what are the similarities and the differences between me and these people that I'm around now, most of whom do not look like me. And what I eventually decided was that we were all Americans. And I based my claim on the label American on the efforts of previous generations of Blacks here, not only the unpaid labor that helped build this country, but also the kind of central nature of Black culture to America. Black people essentially gave America its music, for example. And so I was proud to claim that heritage. And I was not ignorant of or indifferent to American racism, but I still held on to those two beliefs. And then came the election of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's election was made possible by he was supported by the majority of white voters who voted for this man who had run a pretty much openly racist campaign. And so when this occurred, I had to ask myself two questions. One was about the viability of continuing to judge everyone as an individual when white people as a group had supported this man. The other question was, could a self-respecting Black person continue to identify with America when America had chosen this man? So my world got rocked a little bit. And so in order to kind of think this out, I decided that I had to try to figure out for myself as much as I could some of what was going on. So to that end, I decided to conduct interviews with in-depth interviews with a small but disparate group of people, which included several Trump voters. So those interviews are included in the book. The other thing to say about the book is that it's about this theme of rethinking attitudes toward race in the age of Trump and attitudes toward America in the age of Trump. But it's also about family, as the subtitle suggests. It's about raising a family. And my aim was for these two strands to intertwine and to kind of dovetail in the end. These strands of thinking about race and America and thinking about family. So with that in mind, I think I will read just like a 2-minute excerpt here. So this is from chapter 2 of the book. Well, I should say about the book before I do that. The way it's organized is that there's an introduction and 5 chapters. The first 2 chapters kind of trace my life and the development of my thinking. Chapters 3 and 4 comprise the interviews I conducted, and chapter 5 is a kind of a reflection on the whole. So I'll just read this section from chapter 2. Let's see. On the evening of Tuesday, November 8th, 2016, as Amy, my wife, and I sat in our living room with good friends who live 2 blocks away, with the TV tuned to the election returns and champagne chilling in the refrigerator, champagne that, as it turned out, we would not drink for months, ready to toast the election of the first female president of the United States. After a while, our friends departed, too depressed to continue watching. Louie, our younger daughter, was away at college in a Midwestern town where she cast her first ever vote, expecting to be part of history. But our older daughter, a college graduate, was in New York, staying with Amy and me while she looked for an apartment. And shortly after our friends left, she came home and sat with us on the sofa to watch the returns. As things went from unsettling to grim, my older daughter quietly cried. I didn't know what to say to her. We were watching as a man who had bragged about fondling women he had never met, who had received but not rejected the endorsement of the Ku Klux Klan, was elected president. He was the choice of the majority of whites, those people I refused to hate, in America, that land I called my home. And this was analogous to another small thing that had once happened to me, which didn't seem small at the time. When Amy and I were still dating, before I moved into her studio in Park Slope, I had an apartment in Harlem. One weekday morning in 1990, after I had spent the night on the slope, I returned to Harlem to find my apartment door ajar. With a sick feeling, I slowly pushed the door all the way open. Burglars had ransacked the place. My clothes had been tossed every which way, and my computer and television were gone, along with other items I've now forgotten, but mourned the loss of then. What I now find interesting about that experience was my thought process at the time. I kept thinking that if I just looked hard enough in my apartment, searched every corner, racked my brain for where my stuff might be hiding, I would find it all. This, of course, is called denial. And I felt the same impulse after Trump was elected. My mind at first refused to accept that this had happened, but slowly I acknowledged this truth and I began to think about what it meant. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Stu.
Okay, I could have done with you reading for another 15 or 20 minutes, but since I'm here.
That's what the book is for, man. So.
Right. That's right. I want to just selfishly start with a couple of things that I emailed to Cliff when we started talking about possibly doing this. The first thing I wrote to him was, your book is sly and a tad too thoughtful for the times we live in. It takes its time in a way that feels ancient. I said a few other things, but I got to start by saying that Cliff's book made me angry when I first opened it, which I have to remember as a guy who comes from punk rock, that if something makes you angry, there's probably something there. And so I learned that what was there was something that was going to speak beyond anger and was going to reach beyond anger. And I simply had to be less angry in order to hear it. I wanted my anger reflected. And I realized that if I want my anger reflected in everything I read, then I should just look in mirrors and not read books. So Cliff kind of taught me something really important. And I want to just start by saying that. The problem with this book is that there's too much in it. But I mean, that's the great thing about it. It's this really little small book and it's just packed. And I sent Cliff about 22,000 questions and we're going to deal with a handful of them starting now. To what extent does white people's acceptance or lack of acceptance of you as an American limit your ability to be, feel, and behave as such?
Well, you get to a certain point in your life when you decide that other people's ideas of who you are less important than your ideas of who you are. And I would say that very much applies here. I like to tell the story of when I was a boy, and there were these sort of unconscious, or you would absorb. If you were Black in the 70s, you would absorb in about 100 ways a day the idea that there were Americans, and there was you. There was a phrase that was popular when I was a boy: all American good looks. Right. Now, when you hear all American good looks, who do you think they're talking about? It's not Samuel L. Jackson. And the other thing I mention often is that I had that 64 pack of Crayola crayons. Remember that thing? And it had the crayon that was called Flesh, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
And guess what color the crayon was? So this thing is being marketed to Americans, and so if this is the color that they think American skin is, then what am I, right? So yeah. And it takes a while even to realize that that's what you're thinking, and then you have to kind of break out of that, right? So it's a process of realizing what it is you're thinking, and then kind of dealing with that, and it really is kind of up to the individual, I think, to decide what he or she or they are, and act accordingly. And so I embraced the idea of being an American, and it's something I think about every day, but it really is on me, I think. I cannot wait for people to accept what I am. I just have to be what I am.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking about just right now, I'm finally understanding. There's a section in Cliff's book, an African American who I believe without previously being interested in guns, decides to form a club of African American gun people. I don't even know what the proper word is.
Yeah.
And his organization is open to all, but it's also unapologetically Black.
Right.
Now, what you just said, I wasn't planning this question, but what you just said made me think about, okay, how can I be an American if I can't fully participate in everything?
Yeah.
But I think you probably put him in that book, because the last thing I'm going to do, brah, is go to a gun range.
Yeah.
But that guy did and formed an organization, and you did it as well. You went.
Yeah.
And again, that's a challenge that I think the book poses to, like, how you're gonna have to define yourself, essentially.
Right.
You know, and the fact that this gentleman went, you know, as this lone Black guy, and now I think, how many chapters does the
there's hundreds of thousands of people belong to this thing.
Yeah.
His name is Philip Smith, and it's the National African American Gun Association. Yeah.
So not that that's necessarily where Cliff and I are, and we're not the kind of guys that are going to go there necessarily every week, but I think it's a really amazing point that you made with this gentleman, you know, because it's pretty much the last thing I would do. But you know what? And it's the last thing that a lot of African American men would do. But he did it. And I think that's what we've been doing for 400 or so years.
Yeah. I think you're right. You know, I think about the great leaders. You know, I think about Martin Luther King, John Lewis. You know, these are people who were born and grew up when Jim Crow was at its, you know, just at its most entrenched. And you know, these are people who, based on you know, no evidence really, just and you know, based on their faith in themselves and their beliefs that they deserve to be here, you know, fought and won the rights that we enjoy today, and that, you know, that we still have to safeguard. So, you know, I feel like, you know, if those people could embrace the idea of being an American when they couldn't, you know, they couldn't even use the white people's bathroom, you know, then I should have the imagination to place myself in, you know, to claim my rightful place here. You know, that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
We both teach. In fact, we both teach at the same school. And again, sorry, here's another question that's not on my list. But
No problem.
I'm thinking about what my students definitely feel like we are out to solve these problems, not address them, but to actually, literally solve them.
Yeah.
And I find evidence of progress. Without question, in my own 10-year-old boy, I find evidence of progress. You know, things are changing, and I think things in some worlds and some communities are improving. I think what you're talking about, however, is this idea that in many communities, struggle is going to always be continual. I think you said to me when we last talked that it's not like this thing is going away, or at least not going away anytime soon.
Right.
I think our students who have a little bit of the instant gratification thing going feel like, you know, we're going to get, racism is going to be done by 2024, you know, and here's how we can do it.
Right.
And they have a list of, I mean, it's not like they don't have a plan. They do.
Yeah.
They tell me all the time, here's what we got to do, this, we got to do that. And that's going to work. I think you and I are more like, we come from a generation where it's like the long haul is. But can you speak to that a little bit, just how I think young people feel like, no, we got to get rid of this like now in 2 years?
Sure. Yeah. You know, I think in a way they have it right, you know, and what impresses me about this young generation is that I do think that there are things, maybe because you and I are older, that we just kind of take for granted, and some things that we we just assume will always be in place, you know, that other things may get better, but that there are always going to be these problems, you know. And, you know, maybe it comes down to that imagination I was talking about a couple of minutes ago. You know, if you can, you know, if you can imagine, if their attitude is, look, we're taking no prisoners, you know, we're not going to compromise on this thing. We want this now. God bless them, you know.
Yeah.
God bless them. And you know, it could be when they get older, they'll develop kind of the longer view that you and I have, that, you know, maybe they may find in 4 years that they have not completely eradicated racism, but they will, you know, they'll keep struggling, and as they get older, they'll realize that maybe in their lifetimes they will not see it all cleared away, but you know, but they will have made that progress because, you know, because they believe they could.
Right.
You know? So my hat's off to these young people. You know?
Right. Yeah. I hear that.
Yeah.
You and I live more or less in the same neighborhood, and I think it's very easy to put it frankly. We live in a predominantly white area. I think because it's for the most part, liberal area, I think it's very easy for us to judge every white person we see as an individual. I'm going to make that bet that it's the same for you.
Okay.
However, and you know what's coming now, the 70 million who seem to feel otherwise, I'm wondering, does that specter, and it's kind of goofy to call it a specter. I mean, 70 million is hardly a specter, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a specter because we don't deal with those guys face to face every day, maybe, hopefully. But how does that 70 million, how does that affect your ability?
Yeah.
You know,
that's a really
judge
good question.
as individuals.
Yeah. It's a really good question. And, you know, the conclusions I came to in the book are they're very much they're a decision. I mean, I hold on to these two beliefs that I talked about at the beginning of, you know, when I started talking, but it is it has to be a conscious decision and a conscious struggle, and something that I tell myself every day, you know. It's not like I just, you know, I just decided, well, you know, I was right after all, and that's it, and I don't have to think about it anymore. You know,
right.
It's an ongoing thing, and 70 million is a lot of folks. It's a lot of
That's
folks.
a lot.
And well, so, you know, the book, what I tried to do in the book is think about what actually is behind a lot of this, you know, the decision of a lot of people to vote for this man. And you know, there's no way I could talk to 70 million people, but based on, you know, the what I was able to do, and just my thinking about it and hearing these people talk that I interviewed, as I say in the book, you know, I think that, you know, we can't kid ourselves. I mean, the support, you know, a good chunk of the support for Donald Trump, I think, is the fact that he is pretty much openly racist, and some people like that. You know, that's just how it is. There's no getting around that. There are other factors which I tried to identify in the book. You know, there is, and there are three that I kind of focus on, and one in particular. There's ignorance. You know, just ignorance about the conditions that people of color face. There is denial. You know, that there people, I've talked to people, or tried to talk to people, who just don't want to hear that you know, Black people are 2.5 times more likely to get shot by the police than white people are. You know, they find some way to explain this away. So denial is a big part of it. But really, the ringleader in all this is indifference. You know, and it's not that so much that people don't know about this stuff, is that at the end of the day, it's not their top priority, you know. And I think that may be the hardest thing to combat, because I mean, indifference to people who are not you is kind of is just built into the human model, you know. You may be the kind of person who would not dream of, you know, calling somebody a racial slur, or you know, discriminating openly against somebody. But you know, when it comes down to a choice between a policy that you think is going to benefit you and the concerns of people of color, you know,
Right.
then you're going to go with what you think your interests are. You know?
Right. Right.
So, Trump managed to, I think, convince a lot of people that he had their interests at heart. I don't know how he did that, but he did. I mean, the man obviously cares about nobody except Donald Trump, but he managed to convince other people otherwise. So. Right.
I think what's also very problematic, and I know you know this already, that what you just said, when you speak to this indifference, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later, but when you speak to that indifference, you mentioned this in your book somewhere, I'm sure, or maybe I just thought you did, but this idea that, Black people have sort of like, had to deal with this. And we have seen the results, like you said, in your neighborhood. You guys knew that racism was bad because you knew you felt it. Mm-hmm. You knew it existed, and therefore you didn't want it to be something that happened to anybody else. That seems very logical, right? This sucks, so no one should have to deal with this. Right. No one else should have to deal with this. Yeah. And I think that problem with the 70 million who are like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Literally, I don't know what you're talking about,
Right.
I think that's a big issue. I want to get back to the indifference, but I want to tell you that something I was writing here. So regardless of, in regard to you feeling American and wanting to feel American and feeling American, my students would say, you know who they are. My students would say, you can feel as American as you wish. Yeah. But that standing in systematic and violent opposition to your feeling is centuries of proof, right? 70 million voters that are not having it. Yeah. So, and that indifference that you speak to is what it's all about. And I just wonder, like, can you say a little more about white indifference, and let me know if you want to talk about that that amazing carnivore analogy that you
sure.
That just blew my mind.
Sure. I think here's the thing. If you base your idea of yourself on what other people think of you, you are toast.
Yeah.
You are toast psychologically and very likely in other ways as well. And I keep going back to the same heroes, but like, why should Martin Luther King have thought that he was an American?
Right.
When he couldn't, he couldn't use the white people's drinking fountain.
Yeah.
But so, if he could face that, well, here's the thing: if you do a careful study of American history and you decide based on that this is not anything you want a part of, then there's nothing to tell you. I understand. God bless you. But if you reject the idea of being an American because you feel that other people don't consider you that, and you feel that there are some obstacles in your way, then it's time to man up or woman up or non-binary up or whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it, and claim what's yours.
Right.
So yeah,
you've made me feel like I thought of this thing as I was reading or after I read that. Like, it's true that our grandmothers and grandfathers built the clubhouse, but just because they built, they didn't. First of all, they didn't get paid to build the clubhouse, but they built the clubhouse, and then we're like, yo, so they built the clubhouse. Can't we play in it? And it's like, what do you mean? to my students, I mean, I have accepted this.
Yeah.
You have accepted this. My students cannot, and I mean my students of every color. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
My students of every color in each university I teach, the Asian Americans I teach, the Latinx people I teach, the students I teach are like, no, we are not having this.
Okay.
Anymore.
not having
this situation, this white supremacy situation. I'm not. It's not even a question. I'm just. But are you going to talk about the carnivore thing, or
I will. You know.
Okay. I'm sorry to sidetrack you.
No, it's okay. Now I'll get to. I did want to say. I think we are not having this is a great attitude.
Yeah.
And I would make a distinction between saying. I mean, saying an American does not mean okay. I'm down with everything that's happening here. To me, it means the opposite.
Right.
To me, it means the opposite. It means you believe in this. You believe in this place, and you want to fight to make it better.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I think that's what a lot of people don't get.
No,
and so
true.
Part of making it better is doing what these young people want to do. You know, we got a plan to eradicate, discrimination by 2024. Cool, man. I'm on board. Show me the plan. I'll do my part. So the carnivore thing. In the book when I was writing about thinking and writing about indifference, the analogy that occurred to me, and which I don't know what people reading this will think, but I realized, okay, probably a lot of white people's attitudes toward me is analogous to my attitude when it comes to animals, because I have nothing against animals. I would not think of mistreating an animal. If I saw an animal mistreated, I like to think I would stop it. But guess what? I eat meat. I enjoy eating meat, and having nothing against animals does not stop me from benefiting from their slaughter. That is the ugly truth, and I think I think for a lot of people that's pretty much how they feel about people of color. Got nothing against them, but when it comes down to their interests versus mine, guess which one I'm going to pick.
I have to agree with Nancy Jeffrey that that is a powerful and devastating analogy, and that is exactly what I felt when I first read it. I literally put the book down and said, okay, this is a paradigm shift. Like, this is a different way. It's been a very long time, in my reading at least, that I have kind of shifted, or at least being able to add a perspective, you know what I mean, to my current perspective. And what's devastating and powerful, as Nancy said, what's devastating and powerful about it is it puts us all on notice.
About our own indifference, you mean?
Yes, yeah. And to me, that's really the best, that's, a lot of times people throw around the Baldwinian adjective a little too loosely, in my opinion. But that, when you are able to do that thing which calls us all out, becoming call out culture is about, I'm calling you out for what you said. And to me, the great writing calls everybody out. Shakespeare calls everybody out.
No, I hear that.
I just think when I read that, I just thought, okay, that is different now. I've got to really sit back and kind of think about that, because it's me.
Okay.
It's definitely me. And it's a whole bunch of people I know. And it might not be meat. It could be anything. It could be a whole bunch of things. We don't even have to talk about how we just flip the channel when we see all kinds of devastation that's happening in our midst.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
So I don't know how you landed on that one, but you landed on that. That was a gift.
Well, thank you.
Really.
It's funny. You and I have talked about politics in the past, and I don't know if I mentioned this I don't think it was in this book. I mentioned in another book, but I always go back to good old Jesse Jackson, whose name I don't hear that much anymore. But I think about I think it was the 1988 Democratic convention, and he gave a speech at the convention. It was the analogy he used was to his grandmother's quilt, right? And how it was made up of a bunch of patches, and you can't make a quilt out of one patch, So he says, look, Black people, we want our rights. Our patch is not big enough, Women, when you want to be paid, the same per hour as a man, you are right, but your patch is not big enough, And he had this whole thing, and I think what is, I guess it's called intersectionality.
I was just gonna say, Jesse was intersectional before they invented the word.
Right. Exactly. And I have so much respect for people who stand up not just for the group that they happen to belong in, but for other groups too. That's somebody to follow.
Yeah,
that
absolutely,
to me is somebody
absolutely,
to follow.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think in a way it's kind of connected to your point about calling everybody out.
Yeah.
Calling everybody out, but also kind of standing up for everybody too.
Absolutely, absolutely,
they're
absolutely.
not separate.
A great book, is nothing without a little bit of panache and flashiness and suspense and all those things that we like in movies.
All right.
I have to tell you, this gentleman in the Zoom room with us is the Alfred Hitchcock of interviewers. The interviews with Trump voters in this book, they are astonishing. I am a big fan of interviews. I've been reading them forever. I read old ones. I'm a geek about interviews. But I have never experienced such nail-biting suspense woven into the interview format in my life. He is at the table with these folks, and I'm thinking, my God, what is Cliff going to get them to admit next? Because it's like this stuff is just, he's like conjuring these ideas. And I'm just like, I almost felt sorry for the Trump people. Because I'm like, dude, don't let him do it. Don't let him make you say anything else that's going to make you look so bad. It was, and I feel like, I just need to how did you do that?
Well,
it's crazy.
Well, it's funny. You were talking to me a while ago about just feeling anger that I was not more angry in these interviews, which I completely understand. What I knew going in was that I could not challenge these people. They could say what they wanted to. I could not challenge them, because if I did, they wouldn't say anything else. Right? They didn't want to feel. I did not want to make them feel defensive. So, as I think I was saying to you the other day, there were kind of three things going on for me. One is I would say that I'm probably an unusually patient person. That's one. The second is that there were moments when despite being patient, there were moments when I really had to I would ask a question and then almost physically gird myself for the answer, because I knew it was not anything that was going to make me happy. So when I asked one of the guys about Obama, inwardly my stomach muscles tensed, and my biceps were. I was like, okay, I'm ready for this answer.
Right.
He couldn't see me doing this, but but that was the process. And but the third thing was that another part of me knew that if you just keep your cool, you're gonna get some good stuff here.
Yeah.
And I like to think that's what happened. Right. So.
It most definitely happened. And I think of my students, and I think about how my students would have taken this opportunity to rip these people a new one, and then it would have been like a 2-minute discussion.
Right.
And they wouldn't have got to the gold that you got. They're going to tell me and you, well, we're too patient, we're too easy on them. We should have, whatever. The point, it's the result is the point.
Right.
You could take issue with the method all you want, but the result is the point. And the thing you got would not have happened without your approach.
Right. Yeah.
I don't even, I teach songwriting and theater, but I feel like next semester I would love to just have you talk about just that way of making political, because it's deeply political. I know that's not your label, but it's deeply political. It's ultimately, it's fundamentally political.
Mm-hmm.
But your approach is just I think your approach is artistic.
Well, it's
your approach isn't political.
No, I try to be as neutral as so when one of the guys said to me, I think Black Lives Matter is bullshit, but my inwardly I'm going, and but what I said was, why is that? So So then he answered.
Amazing, man. Amazing.
Yeah. So
Just amazing. Just amazing.
yeah.
But honestly, folks, these interviews are not. There's nothing like them. I've never read anything like them. What did you want us to learn? Not what did you learn, but what did you want us to learn from listening to these voters?
Yeah. I guess, part of me, I tried to go into this. Nobody likes to have their fundamental views challenged. Like I talk a lot in the book about what I call rootedness.
Yes.
The ideas that people are rooted in, and the things, and the way that being rooted in an ideology or religion or whatever it is grounds you, but also can make you into a denier of reality, because if anything happens that challenges the way you were rooted, you will find some way to explain it away, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of what Trump support is from people who are rooted in certain ideas. They're not necessarily racist ideas, but definitely, definitely rooted in the idea that that America is about as good as it gets, and if you're rooted in that idea, you're going to respond well to a candidate who says pretty much that,
Yes.
We don't have to worry about it. Systemic racism, what's that?
Right.
So, I mean, there are infuriating reasons why people voted for Trump, but I don't think all of them have to do with just rabid racism.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's I guess that's one of the takeaways that so I think it's a matter of I spoke about indifference, and I think there's denial. Denial sort of indicates the presence of a conscience, which in turn suggests that somewhere down there is a person you can talk to, so you can address that, maybe. Ignorance you can address with information, maybe. How do you address indifference? And I think the answer to that, if there is one, is that you have to make people understand, and I think this is going to be Joe Biden's job. You have to make people understand what's in it for them. What's in it for someone who otherwise has no reason to care about people of color. It could be that if you don't start caring, we're going to burn your house down.
Right. Right.
That was James Baldwin's response. The fire,
Right.
No more water, the fire next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that is I think that's the gig. I think and so I guess what I wanted people to learn from these interviews is that we have a lot of work to do, but there is but it's not completely hopeless. Is my take on it. Of course, I live in Park Slope, so what do I know?
What do you know? Yeah. Well, you ramped perfectly into my last question, which was just it's a bit of a rhetorical question because I think we both would have the same answer to it. But if, again, I keep referring to our students, if my students were here, do Black people and white people have much to say to each other anymore? And I ask you this because you and I, both at Sarah Lawrence and, New School where I'm at also. For those of you who don't know, there are a lot of young people who are very, brilliant and active, but they are sort of compartmentalizing now who gets to speak on what and who gets to say what about what. Yeah. And so you don't have anymore this person who is speaking and articulating the issue well if they're not the right person. It's almost like a marketing thing, like that person doesn't get to talk. I mean, I have been in rooms in my schools where a person of a certain color stands in the back of the room.
Wow.
And doesn't get to speak until I've been in that room, and both at Sarah Lawrence and at New School. where literally it is like, do you guys know what this looks like?
Right.
Where literally you are in the back of the room if you are a heterosexual white male. That's not going to end well, that approach.
That is not going to end well. No.
You know, but I mean, I literally have been in those rooms, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, my students tell me, nah, people of color are tired to listen. White people have to listen to us and they have to do all this work. And it's sort of a catch-22 because it's like, white people need to do all this work, but then shut up, don't say anything.
Right.
You know, it's a little complicated. But anyway, my point is, what would you say to those students who are saying, no, we don't have anything to say to each other. We just got to all do our separate work.
Man.
Yeah, I know. I don't have an answer.
Well, I mean, I guess my only answer is that way lies danger. You know, I can see these same white guys now standing willingly in the back of the room 10 years from now going,
boom,
wait a minute, I'm done with this bullshit.
Of course. Of course.
I think we do have things to say to each other, and I think we should be allowed to say them. And Lord, man, no, that's not the way. That's not the way.
I don't think so either. But I have hope for the first year's students that I have who are very different than the fourth year students. But that's a whole other Zoom conversation.
Right. Well, I think these things go in cycles too, you know. So
yes, yeah.
So.
Sounds like that guy Biden has a tough job, according to you.
Oh man, yeah. Better him than me, I'm telling you, man. Better him than me.
I don't know, Cliff. I mean, you look good in 2024, I think. You got a book? You got books already.
Yeah, this is my campaign memoir. Didn't I tell you that? Oh man, are we?
I think it's about time.
Yeah, we have some great questions from the audience.
Okay.
I thought I'd kick off with one from Nancy. She says, "You think there's a parallel to the indifference to the suffering of Black people in the areas of racial injustice and voting for Trump, and the refusal of millions to follow basic masking and social distancing precautions during COVID, especially when the impacts of this epidemic are disparate in different communities?"
Really good question. The mask thing, I think maybe I don't know if indifference is the answer to that. I sometimes feel like ideas about freedom in America are like it's like this glass of milk, you know, and it's this great thing, but it's been left out too long and unattended to, and it's just like developed these weird properties, you know. It's like what used to be a belief, what used to be a healthy belief in freedom has now become this belief that, you know, I'm American, so I can do whatever the hell I want, you know. It's like, no, man, that's not how it works, you know. I think I don't know, this idea somehow has, like, over the centuries has kind of curdled, and to the point where it's made Americans into, or so many Americans into, just adolescents, you know. Somebody online put it very well. They said, insisting on your freedom without insisting on your responsibility is to be an adolescent, you know. And I think that's what we got going here. So, yeah.
I live with an adolescent who has a better sense of responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a great question from Peter that he sent to me. He asks, how has the process of writing the book had an impact on you? For example, how do you now mindfully and or actively work on your own indifference?
Good question. I mean, I definitely had to think about my own attitudes, and when I was thinking about this, and as Stu said, I think we're all implicated in some of this, and so I have had to check myself, you know. So much of my thinking, you know, like everybody else in the past few weeks, has been about the election. You know, what can I do? But I am, you know, I am aware of you know, the things that I get annoyed with other people with, I wonder if I practice some of those same things, you know, like, you know, assuming that if something's written by a Black person or if a TV show is about a Black person, that it's not intended for me. You know, do I do that? Do I you know, do I see Asian American literature and think, well, it's, you know, I can get to that some other time because they're not really talking to me. And I think, well, that's not, you know, this requires some thought. And so, you know, yeah, you know, I got to work on myself too while I'm urging other people to do it. So yeah, definitely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There's a question here from Hillary saying, speaking of interviews, I'm wondering, Cliff, if you were inspired by W. Kamau Bell's interviews in United Shades of America.
I can't say I was because I haven't read them. So, so there's a short answer to that one. I'm sorry to say, but no, I mean I guess if I was inspired by anybody, I guess it was in my approach to this. As I say in the introduction to the book, it was a writer, Joan Didion, you know, who would interview people, and I really admired her ability to. She really, in her writing, just comes at everything with a fresh eye, you know, with just the absence of preconceived notions, you know, and that was what I struggled to do with the book, which was to look for the answers, but not try to find only the ones I wanted, you know, and that's what, in a way, what was frightening about writing this book is I didn't want myself, I didn't want to kind of have an end, have a conclusion I wanted to reach and then kind of steer myself toward it. I wanted to see what was actually going on and to write based on that. So the interviews, I guess, were part of that, were part of that process. Yeah.
There's a question here from Donna. She says, I'm curious what you think about people of color in the public eye who've been supporters of Trump. I'm thinking about people like Candace Owens. How can people of color be so supportive of someone who is so blatantly racist?
Man, I tell you, yeah, I saw a thing recently that said something like 10% of Black men supported Donald Trump, and I was laughing at myself. I don't think this is what Du Bois meant by the talented 10th. You know, this is a different 10th. It's like the untalented 10th. So. Yeah, man. You know, coming back to like indifference and self-interest, you know, like 50 Cent said that, you know, if Trump was not reelected, he was going to have to leave the country. And, you know, which my response was, have a good trip, man. Sayonara. I don't, man. That's a puzzle. None of the Black people I know support Trump. So somebody was suggesting to me that might have to be my next book, and it might be actually because I'm really curious. And like, you know, the LGBT community too. Apparently Trump doubled his support among that community. So I'm really kind of wondering what's happening. I mean, I think like I know a number of Black celebrities have supported Trump, maybe because they like his tax policies, or, you know, it might be as simple as that kind of self-interest, you know. And you know, there's the old view that in America people sort of identify with the group they want to belong to, right? So if you see yourself as somebody who aspires to be rich, then you want to imagine yourself in that group, and so you favor the people who are good to that group. Never mind if you don't have, right now, you don't have two nickels to rub together. You know, you're kind of projecting where you want to be. That's as good as I can do explaining that one.
Yeah, thanks. I know I just read Isabel Wilkerson's cast, and she talked exactly about that point with economic self-interest.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been a terrific event. We are just about out of time. Cliff, is there something you'd like to leave us with? Some last thoughts? Linda had a comment in the questions asking a little bit of clarification about what you meant about Black Lives Matter. And I mean, it's been quite a road since What It Is came out.
Yeah. What did I say about Black Lives Matter?
I mentioned it in passing in some.
Okay. I'm happy to clarify what I said. I just don't remember what I said. Does anybody?
I think that Linda, her question was that she took what you said to interpret it as meaning that you weren't supportive of Black Lives Matter.
Oh, no, that is not what I meant at all. No. That's not what I meant at all. No, I was saying, I think one of the gentlemen I interviewed said, I think Black Lives Matter is bullshit. And I said, why is that? And he went on to give his answer. So no, I fully support Black Lives Matter. So yeah, I'm glad you asked. Yeah. I don't know. Last thoughts. Thank you, Stu, for working so hard on these questions and being willing to do this. And thank you to the bookstore. I really appreciate your hosting this event. And yeah, I like this book. You know, yeah, you should read it. How's that?
That is a perfect last thought.
Okay.
Yes, everyone should read this book. Thank you so much to Cliff and Stu for taking the time tonight. Thank you, audience, for being here. Cliff, thank you for your patience as we had to reschedule your in-person event and then reschedule it again and then move it virtual. I'm glad you could be here now.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your night.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.